So the date is Tuesday, February 17th, 2026. The time is 6:14 p.m. Thank you for folks' patience as we finished our Board of Finance meeting. The first item on our agenda this evening is a recommended action to adopt our agenda as amended on Civic Clerk. Is there a motion to that end?
Recording in progress.
So moved by Councillor McKnight. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councillor Litwin. Any discussion on that item? We'll go to a vote then. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are any opposed? That carries unanimously. So we have our agenda as amended on Civic Clerk. The second item on our agenda is public forum. Although public forum is set for a time certain of 6:30 p.m., it is only 6:15 p.m. And so waiting until 6:30, we'll proceed to the third item on our agenda, which, Mayor, is your item, General City Affairs. And then we will plan on turning to public forum when you're complete, Mayor. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Council President Travers. Good evening to the City Council and to Burlington. Tonight, during Mayor Update, I want to share a few updates regarding a city recycling issue that we just spent time at the Board of Finance discussing and debating and eventually passed out of that committee and will come to the City Council on March 9th. I also want to give an update on our fiscal year 27 budget, a new executive order I issued just today, and then finally wrap up with the tax fairness work that the city's been underway, and there's a resolution tonight on your agenda I just want to address briefly. So first to recycling, I want to take a moment to speak directly about the municipal recycling program, where we are, how we got here, and why we are recommending a 7-year contract with a private hauler. This has not been an easy decision for me as mayor. I spent most of my career in the labor movement, and usually when we talk about contracting, it is something that labor organizers in particular shy away from. However, there is a nuanced difference here in the city of Burlington's position that I want to itemize a little bit for the sake of the public to understand my position. The decision that I came to, as well as the work by our Department of Public Works, represents months of collaborative work with our AFSCME leadership, which is one of our city unions that represents the current recycling haulers for our city, as well as city councilors to fully understand the operational realities that we are facing. Municipal recycling has been struggling, largely due to personnel shortages that mirror challenges that we're seeing across the industry. To keep the program running, we have been consistently pulling DPW employees off the jobs that they are hired to do and reassigning them to recycling routes. These are employees who did not sign up for the recycling collections work, and recycling is one of the more physically demanding assignments within the Department of Public Works and has a comparatively high injury rate as well. Every time we shift staff to cover recycling, we're pulling them away from essential services such as snow plowing, sidewalk maintenance, road work, and other core responsibilities of the department. The proposed 7-year contract gives us stability and a breathing room. It is a strategic pause for the city to figure out how to get this right and how to do better here. It also allows us to stop stretching our city workforce, our unionized workforce, thin, and to protect our city employees from being repeatedly reassigned into higher injury work that they simply did not sign up for. It ensures also that the residents will continue to receive reliable recycling services while we address the broader operational challenges. And importantly, it gives the city time to pause and thoughtfully evaluate what a more sustainable, long-term model for waste and recycling and compost pickup could look like here in the city. This decision is also about respecting our workforce, and I really want to emphasize that is a core fundamental of why I came to this position. Our DPW employees are highly skilled professionals, and they deserve predictable assignments, safe working conditions, and the ability to focus on the jobs they were hired to do. I in particular want to thank and call out the AFSCME leadership for engaging constructively in this conversation and helping us to continue to remember that centering worker safety and fairness and their voices is the primary importance as elected leaders of the city. This is both an unusual position, as I mentioned before, but it's important to take. It's an important position for a union to take with contracting services out to a private entity, but it's informed by the realities that their members are facing every day. We heard about double shifts between snow removal and recycling at public forum here at council in the past, and it's time again for the city to do a strategic pause on this recycling program. The other couple reasons I want to mention before I move on from recycling is, as everyone knows at this point, the City of Burlington is facing yet another difficult budget year, and we're having to make hard decisions about city services across the board. Our responsibility is to ensure reliable service delivery while being honest about what we can sustainably manage within our current staffing and financial realities as a city. This contract is not a retreat from our commitment to recycling. It is a pragmatic step to stabilize the service, protect our workers, and give ourselves the space to build a stronger system. I want to reiterate what we talked about in Board of Finance, that the city maintains oversight of our recycling services per ordinance, and we have a plan in place to explore how to build a more sustainable city-run system in the future, and that is what will be coming to full council on March 9th. Again, really appreciate the council's partnership in grappling with these trade-offs. It's rare when there's a decision put at my desk or on your desk that is easy or straightforward or in an easy binary vote. This is the nuance of complicated and complex decision-making in what a modern-day city faces. So on to the executive order. Today, I signed an executive order outlining how the City of Burlington will prepare and respond if there are changes or escalations in federal immigration enforcement activity. Importantly, and I want to repeat this, there is no indication currently that enforcement activity is increasing in Burlington at this time. However, this action of the executive order has been about preparation and clarity so that we're not in a position where we have to react. The executive order does several key things, and you can find a full copy of the EO on the mayor's webpage on our city website. The key things include directing the city to review and strengthen our local emergency management plan, clarifying how we would activate our emergency operations center if needed, if we are experiencing an ICE surge, updating communication systems to ensure timely, multilingual, and accessible information for all residents, outlining what to expect from our Burlington Police Department, and reaffirming that the department remains locally controlled and focused on community safety, not civil immigration enforcement. It ensures city staff are trained on how to lawfully respond if federal agents enter city buildings. This is building off a policy we've had for almost a year now within our city buildings. Coordinates with community partners to identify supports for individuals and families who may be impacted. And the order also makes clear that no city resources, personnel, property, or data will be used to assist the civil federal immigration enforcement. This is consistent with Vermont's fair and impartial policing policy. And as I shared earlier today, careful preparation is essential to maintaining our community's trust as government. When residents know there are clear plans and defined roles, we can respond thoughtfully in a way that reflects, and also in a way that reflects Burlington's values. City departments have 7 days to implement the order's requirements. We've actually been working on this for weeks or days, I should say, ahead of this, but now there's 7 days for this to go into effect, and updates will be shared as appropriate. Again, you can find the full text of the executive order on my webpage on the city website. And Town Meeting TV, thank you again for being there this morning at the press conference. You can see the full footage there on their YouTube channel. Next, I want to speak briefly to our budget. Last Friday, I was joined by union leaders from our Burlington Police Officers Association, the Burlington Firefighters Association, and AFSCME Local 1343 to express support and strong unified support for the 5-cent police and fire tax rate increase on the March 3rd town meeting day ballot. This proposed increase would fund negotiated salary and benefit agreements and allow the city to add 2 new firefighter positions and support 6 new first responder vehicles. The proposal received bipartisan backing from both the Board of Finance and City Council, as folks here know, but I want to remind the public on that piece. I also announced on Friday some late-breaking budget news, which is a good news for the city, and I want to make sure I repeat this as in many places as possible before town meeting day. It's regarding our Burlington retirement system. It performed better than expected last year. And what this means is that we had originally estimated in our budget development work assumptions that indicated we would need to increase the retirement splinter tax to 21 cents next year from the current 19-cent rate. We received the final numbers from our retirement advisors, and that is good news because it outperformed. We now only need to reduce the splinter tax to 18 cents in fiscal year 27. Plainly, what this means is that overall, the tax rate increase we've been estimating between the police and fire increase we discussed, you discussed a couple meetings ago, plus our debt service splinter tax, plus the retirement tax, and any other estimated taxes that are going up, which include our county tax primarily. We only need to increase taxes by 6.1%. That's different than the 9.4% we originally were estimating. This is really big and significant news, because if you remember, the median assessed value home is valued at about $353,000. Originally, we were estimating a tax bill increase of $285 for the year, based on our original calculations. With this reduction in our retirement tax for next year, that number drops to only $186 for the entire year. This again assumes that voters implement the 5-cent tax increase for police and fire that we have on the ballot. So I'm really encouraged by this. I can answer more questions offline on retirement information with the counselors, but I want the public to know that we've been working really hard to deliver a balanced budget that will be keeping affordability in mind for residents, and this is really good news overall for property taxpayers. And actually, I will save my tax fairness comments for when you get to that item on your agenda, but I want to make sure that folks have that information, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. We will now turn back to the second item on our agenda, which is public forum. It's set for a time certain of 6:30 p.m., but absent objection, I think we'll go ahead and open public forum now at 6:25 p.m. As is our practice, we will begin public forum with Burlington residents who are here in person in City Hall. We will then turn online to any Burlington residents who are online. We then repeat that process for non-Burlington residents. So we'll come back for any non-Burlington residents who have signed up for public forum here in person, and then online. Whether in person or online, speakers will be provided 2 minutes. If you're here in person, when I call your name, please come here to the table, take a seat, pull the microphone close, hit the push button to make sure that the green light is illuminated. If you're online, you'll be promoted on Zoom, and I will let you know once you have the opportunity to speak. I will also note if I could be promoted as a panelist on Zoom as well, so I can share my screen here. That's how folks will see it on a timer. I have my hand raised for whoever's controlling the Zoom. Thank you. I'm now a panelist. Thank you. When you're making comments, again, whether here in person or online, please direct them to me as the chair and not to any other individual. We will not tolerate any individualized attacks on the mayor or members of this council, particularly if they reference any individual's protected characteristics. We also ask that public comments please refrain from vulgarity, obscenities, or being overly loud or disruptive. If any speaker violates these rules as I've described them, I'll politely provide them the opportunity to continue their public comment in alignment with these rules. If a speaker continues in violation, I reserve the right to end public comment at that point in time. So with that, we have our first Burlington resident here in City Hall, who is Representative Troy Hedrick, who will be followed by David Massell.
Thank you, Chair Travers. I am speaking on the deliberative agenda item regarding the proposed acceptance of a work of public art from the Missisquoi Tribal Council. My concern is not grounded in opposition to art, but in principle and in process. The process by which the state of Vermont recognized so-called Vermont Abenaki groups was procedurally flawed, incomplete, and fundamentally inconsistent with the international standards for Indigenous rights. I've reviewed all the recordings from those committee meetings and am in the process of transcribing the testimony. In those processes, there was no testimony or participation from the sovereign Abenaki First Nations of Odanak or Waldenak nations, whose ancestors lived across this region long before modern borders were drawn. The United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People affirms core rights that are directly applicable here. Article 3 states that Indigenous peoples have the right to self-determination. Article 18 affirms the right to participate in decision-making through representatives chosen by themselves. Article 33 recognizes Indigenous peoples' rights to determine their own identity and membership according to their customs and traditions. Critically, Article 36 affirms that international borders shall not be an impediment to the rights of Indigenous peoples to maintain and develop contacts, relations, and cooperation for spiritual, cultural, economical, and political purposes. These articles mean that Indigenous nations must be allowed to speak for themselves about who represents them and how their histories and peoples are publicly recognized. The state failed in the application of these articles. This council must not make the same mistake. I call on this council to honor the internationally recognized rights of Indigenous peoples by deferring to the expressed wishes of the sovereign Abenaki First Nations at Odanek and Wallanack regarding acceptance of any gift that is intended to represent the Abenaki. To do less perpetuates the very procedural exclusion that the United Nations adopted to prevent. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Hedrick. Our next speaker is David Massell, to be followed by Charlie Messing.
Am I live?
You are live.
Thank you. My name is David Massell. I'm a Ward 6 resident. I'm a professor of history at UVM for 28 years. I helped to organize the 3 public forums on Indigenous identity at UVM. Those forums, in turn, prompted the press investigations that brought this challenging issue to a wider audience. For 250 years, Americans have played Indian as a part-time fantasy. Our Sons of Liberty dressed as Mohawk to toss English tea into Boston Harbor. American children have dressed and played Indian in summer camp since the 1890s. It was in the 1970s, during the Civil Rights Movement, that Americans began to claim to be Indians, along with the prestige and benefits that come with that status, and often coming to believe in their adopted identity. And for Native scholars like Kim Tallbear, that phenomenon is a continuation of colonization, i.e. white people taking from Indians without consent. Here in Vermont, the awkward and inconvenient truth is that virtually all members of our state-recognized Abenaki tribes, all 4, including the Missisquoi and the entire leadership, bear no Abenaki ancestry or connection to a historic Indian tribe. They are people of European descent. That's what we learned from the recent scholarship of University of Ottawa, Darryl LaRue, which aligns with state and federal studies, and the recent investigations by Vermont Public, VT Digger, NHPR, CBC, and so forth. Yes, these groups are recognized as Abenaki by the state in a process that never required proof of Abenaki descent, that marginalized Abenaki citizens, and that was loaded with conflicts of interest. So, Burlington choosing to collaborate with invented Indian tribes throws the weight and credibility of city government behind deeply flawed state law. It falls in line with a long history of cultural erasure of Native people and undermines Indigenous sovereignty. I would hope Burlington can do better. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next Burlington resident will be Charlie Messing, to be followed by Romeo von Herman.
Hello. Good evening, Chair, and if you see anyone else, tell them I said hello also. ICE is horrible. Everything I've heard about them and seen about them is terrible. And Stephen Miller, wouldst that I could put him on a raft and set him afloat in the ocean. But as for me and Burlington, I think you're doing a fine job of getting out of several holes that we have fallen into. We didn't dig the holes. The hospital. Why, we have a hospital. It calls itself the University Hospital. It's the city hospital. It works for 40,000 people. And it is important to have accessibility. We need the bus back. Number 11 bus from the waterfront up College Street to the hospital, out Dorset toward the airport. And if the hospital is serious about having half of its operations out on Tilley Drive, they can't just act like that's for the people with cars and taxis. They have to make it accessible. They can do that by funding it for the bus company. That's the most important thing I have to say. 9 seconds left. How lush. I hope you all are doing well. It's a nice evening.
Thank you, Charlie. Our last Burlington resident here in person is Romeo Von Herman. We'll then turn to Burlington residents online, the first of whom is Forrest Richard.
Good evening, everyone. As someone who was born and raised in civil war-torn Somalia, immigrated to the United States legally, and later became a proud U.S. citizen, I strongly oppose Resolution 5.2, and because I believe it distracts from real local issues we face here in Burlington. I understand and know firsthand what a true government collapse looks like. I lived in one. And through a decade of civil war, it doesn't look good. I came to this country because of its constitutional order, separation of powers, commitment to rule of law. While I fully support due process and judicial oversight and accountability, for any federal agency introducing and passing Resolution 5.2 creates an illusion that local government has authority over federal matters. Burlington has pressing issues, local issues rather, that demand our full attention. These include and not limited to rising property taxes, housing affordability, and other public safety issues. I can go on, but my time is up, so thank you.
Thank you, Romeo. We'll now turn to Burlington residents who are online before returning to City Hall for non-Burlington residents. The first Burlington resident online is Forrest Richard. And Forrest, let me just share my screen here. All right, and Forrest will be followed by Sharon Busher. Forrest, you should be able to go ahead and unmute yourself. Thank you.
Hello?
Yep, you can go ahead, please. Assuming this is Forrest Richard.
Yes, this is for. I just wanted to speak on the resolution regarding ICE. I'm definitely in support of the preparations that the city is doing, but I wanted to express some concerns around BPD's stated ability to collect and observe evidence. Worried that federal agents could easily subpoena the evidence from Burlington Police Department. Yes, ICE is a bigger threat to us, but we don't necessarily trust the local police department with that responsibility at this point. So, yes, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Our next Burlington resident signed up online is Sharon Busher. Sharon, you should be able to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you. Thank you, President Travers. I just wanted to acknowledge tonight the passing of Jesse Jackson. I was in my first term as city councilor when he ran for the Democratic nomination in 1988. And I had the privilege of introducing him when he came and spoke at Ira Allen Chapel. I didn't grow up as a political animal. I've become one, but I didn't grow up that way. And I knew about him certainly, but I wish now that I had the wisdom and the knowledge I have so that I could have done a proper introduction. I had a blank slate. I knew so little, and it's still half empty, but I've learned a lot in that time, and I've learned from him and others. But I just wanted to acknowledge how significant a person he was. And his actions and his words will motivate and live on, as I know you all know that too. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. Second thing is that I'm asking the members of the ordinance committee of the city council to, as you move forward with the joint committee process for inclusionary zoning, that you do your best to get the citizens of Burlington involved early on, because we all know when it comes to the council for consideration, it's really a done deal almost. So please get people involved, make them aware, let residents have a say in what they think about inclusionary zoning. Certainly I support it, but I don't know what's on the agenda. But I just would like you all to do your part in making sure people get involved early on when it matters. Thank you so much.
Burlington resident online is Julie Masuga. We'll then come back to City Hall. We have two non-Burlington residents signed up here in Denise Watso and Robert Richard. But Julie, you should be able to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, I want to thank the City and Mayor's Office for being proactive about ICE. Myself and other volunteers have been working hard on tracking ICE detainees in the state, as well as ensuring that Burlington Airport is no longer being used for deportations. Every step we can take counts. But with that in mind, I want to highlight a concern about the executive order that recently went out. And that's that if police are responsible for documenting what happens during ICE activity, that information may still be easily subpoenaed, which could make things worse for both the targets and people working to protect those targets. Burlington would have to fight to keep that data out of the Fed's hands, and obviously that's an unintended consequences, but could still put people in greater danger. It would also be terrible for the police to interfere with those advocates that are doing the work to help protect people, and I'm not sure how that factors into the executive order. I also just want to mention that just because the city has a more progressive mayor and a different police chief does not mean that the police are entitled to more trust. Having spent countless hours working to prevent deportations, I had the experience of making a call to the Burlington police and people being actively trafficked through the airport through secret doors and bypassing TSA with no apparent judge's order to do so. The response I got from BPD was literally that they, quote, had better things to do. Some of us followed this interaction by talking with Chief Burke. We were told that the BPD were too intimidated by ICE to respond to them. It's hard to have confidence in them given this track record. Again, I am overjoyed that the EO states that consistent with Vermont's fair and impartial policing policy, BPD will not engage or assist in civil immigration enforcement. But I know that everyday people have been putting in the work to keep each other safe up until now, in spite of the police's unwillingness to help. Thank you.
We will return now to City Hall, and as mentioned, we have two non-Burlington residents signed up to speak. The first is Denise Watso, who will be followed by Robert Richard.
I'm so short I could just stand. Ooh, do I press this? Do I press the button?
No, you're on.
Kwai, Mziwi, Denise Watso. I'm an Abenaki citizen of the Odanak First Nation, and I speak on behalf of our elected council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak regarding an important symbolic gesture, the removal of the statue of Greylock and its replacement. Greylock was an historic Abenaki leader. His direct descendants are members of the Abenaki Nation of Odanak. Honoring his legacy must therefore include meaningful engagement with the community that carries his bloodline, his memory, and his cultural heritage. To truly respect Greylock is to respect his people, those who continue to live, speak, and create as Abenakis today. The so-called Abenaki Nation of Missisquoi does not represent actual Abenaki people. Rigorous studies conducted by experts in genealogy and historical demography show that 98% of the individuals in the 4 Abenaki groups recognized by Vermont, including the Missisquoi, have no ancestry of Abenaki. Their identity claims are unfounded, and their institutional recognition undermines the sovereignty of authentic indigenous peoples. nor does the current statute, which we view as an offensive stereotype Indian honor Chief Greylock's legacy. This can be a moment of reconciliation, dialogue, and truth. But for it to be meaningful, it must be based on authentic collaborations with the legitimate representatives of the Abenaki people. It must be grounded in a commitment to the truth. Working with legitimate representatives of Odanak and Wolanak means respecting the rights of Indigenous nations to determine our own citizenship, our own voices, and our own arts. We urge the city to reconsider its collaborations. We urge the City Council to have the courage to reject this statute. Willa-wini, thank you.
Thank you. Our last non-Burlington resident here in person is Robert Richard. Robert will be followed online by non-Burlington residents who signed up. I have 3 non-Burlington residents signed up online in Laura Lapointe, Sherry Wormser, and Karen Sita. Laura and Sherry, I do not see anyone online with those names, and so if you're on Zoom under a different name, if you could please use the raise hand function, so when we get to you, we know that it's you. But first, Robert, please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing this to happen on state and city Missisquoi Abenaki territory. Missisquoi Abenaki territory, as we're recognized by the city and the state. And if you have people telling you different, they're telling you that all your councils failed for recognizes. I don't think that's happened. I've been on this totem pole commission since day one. I have submitted concepts of the drawing of the totem to City Hall, to what I'm on the 4th REIB director since it started, and they've all loved it. And for this to be happening at this late date is not right. And she mentions Greylock. Where were they for the dedication of Greylock when that statue was erected 30 plus years ago? There was no Odanak there in the park. It was Vermont Missisquoi that was there. They didn't care. And as far as that, their genocide claims from unrecognized, untrained genealogists just doesn't hold water. And he mentioned Vermont Public, 7 Days, Vermont Digger. None of them will run ads for their propaganda anymore. They're done with it. I don't know what else to tell you, but they've been trying to commit modern-day genocide against the Vermont Abenaki for 3 years now. Their goal is to get in this state, and it's all about money. They got $220 million recently for Canadian land claims. What do you think they're going to do when they try to get in this state and get recognized? Thank you very much.
That was our last individual signed up for public forum here in person. I do have Laura Lapointe or Sherry Wormser signed up online. Again, Laura and Sherry, I do not see anyone by those names on Zoom. If you're here under a different name, if you could please use the raise hand function, or they're not here in person, are they? Okay. I do see Karen Sita. Karen, I'm going to promote you here. If you could please give me an opportunity to share my screen with the timer before you begin.
Hello.
Yep, you can go. Yes, you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'm just laughing because I'm not saying that the testimonies were funny, but all I know is I'm on Pocahontas' side. Whatever side she's on, I'm with her. And I've been told that I'm a Cherokee type of girl if I had to choose. Mr. President, last time, I don't even recall what happened last time because I just be doing diva moments and living my life. I'm like Jesus. Sometimes I have to flip tables, but like obviously I'm like modern version, cute girl version. So I'm not going to flip tables. And because of Pilates and bar, I really don't lift more than 3 pounds. But, I have to flip tables because that's the art of warfare. But I'm really not trying to fight. I'm really just trying to figure out how to get America and Ashley back, like most girls. So I'm here to talk about the ICE situation because obviously there's nothing like your parents coming to you and saying, hey, you're an American citizen. Your life automatically changes. Even though you live in America, you're just living that American dream. And then you realize, oh, it's a real dream. Actually, it's reality to be an American citizen. That's why people are doing anything, life or death. really to become one. They like to, they want you to forget so much. So, I just got appointed to be a coach. I am now coach. Holla. And if my girls, while we do our runs, while we stay active, while we look amazing, while we focus on our hearts, if our girls and any elementary girls, see any tomfoolery in the city, I will be coming right to the city in the mayor's office. We will be meeting. Okay, needles. We got to get that out of here. So I don't want to quote Senator Kennedy, but I rather trust the police than a crackhead. So I know that for a fact. And people like to say, "Oh my God, they arrested you when you were in a Chanel dress. How do you still have faith in the?" I told you it was a masculine woman, and she was blaming me instead of blaming her mother. So I don't blame law enforcement. I like, Officer Kevin, like I talk about that officer in South Bronx who was delicious. I love officers who are going to protect me. Most pretty girls are just with me. Shout out to all my Chinese baddies, by the way. We are going to be more hotter than before.
We'll ask once again if Laura Lapointe or Sherry Wormser is online. If you are under a different name, if you could please use the raise hand function on Zoom. Okay. Not seeing anyone online, we will go ahead and close public forum at 6:50 p.m. That takes us now to our consent agenda, and I will just note, after the consent agenda and before we turn to our deliberative agenda, we do need to sit as the Board of Civil Authority this evening, as well as the Local Control Commission. So when we're done with the consent agenda, Mayor, if you're prepared, I would turn to you as the chair of the Board of Civil Authority to open that meeting, and then we'll turn to our meeting as the Local Control Commission before beginning our deliberative agenda. But as mentioned, the first item is our consent agenda. Is there a motion to adopt our consent agenda as amended?
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councillor Bergman. Is there any discussion on that motion? We'll just note for the record that we're joined by Councillors Kane and Newbeezer online, so we do have all councillors in attendance, either in person or virtually. Seeing no discussion, we'll go to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Are any opposed? That carries unanimously. So, as mentioned, we do need to sit this evening as both the Board of Civil Authority and the Local Control Commission. So before turning to our deliberative agenda, we will briefly recess the regular City Council meeting at 6:52 p.m. And Mayor, I'm happy to turn to you as the Chair of the Board of Civil Authority.
Thank you, President Travers. So I'm going to call to order the Board of Civil Authority on Tuesday, February 17th, 2026 at 6:51 p.m. Our first item is the agenda. Is there a motion on the agenda?
I move to adopt the agenda.
Moved by Councillor Travers. Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Councillor Schachter. Any discussion on the agenda before we take our vote? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. On to our only action item, which is the consent agenda. Is there a motion on the consent agenda?
Move to adopt the consent agenda and take the actions indicated.
Thank you, Councillor Travers. Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Councillor Bergman. Any discussion on this motion before we vote? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion carries unanimously. And with no other item in front of the Board of Civil Authority, I will adjourn the meeting at 6:52 p.m.
Thank you, Mayor. Before resuming our regular City Council meeting, again, we do need to sit as the Local Control Commission. I will call to order the Local Control Commission at 6:53 p.m. And we'll ask Commissioner Broderick, as Chair of our License Committee, to please offer a motion on the Local Control Commission agenda.
Move to adopt the agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Schachter. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll go to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Are any opposed? That is unanimous. Commissioner Broderick, may I turn to you for a motion on our consent agenda?
Move to adopt the consent agenda and take the actions indicated.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Schachter. If there is no discussion on the item, we will go to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously. And we do have 6 deliberative items we need to make our way through here. And Appreciate your work and the License Committee's work here. Commissioner Broderick, if you could start us off with item 3.1, please.
I will move to approve the 2026-2027 first and third class liquor license applications for Aches Place, 134 Church Street, with all standard conditions.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Singh. Is there any discussion on this item? We'll go to a vote then. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That is unanimous. Item 3.2, please, Commissioner Broderick.
I move to approve the 2026-2027 outside consumption permit application for Aches Place, 134 Church Street, with the following condition: Church Street Marketplace Commission approval.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Schachter. If there is no discussion on that item, we will go to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are any opposed? That is unanimous. Item 3.3.
Move to approve the 2026-2027 first and third class liquor license applications for Sweetwater's, 120 Church Street, with all standard conditions.
Thank you. Is there a second to that item?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Singh. Is there any discussion on this item? All right. With the excitement around Sweetwater's return to Church Street.
I just didn't know it was coming back.
Yes. We will go to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are any opposed? That is unanimous. Commissioner Broderick, can I turn to you for an item on motion on item 3.4?
I move to approve the 2026-2027 outside consumption permit application for Sweetwater's, 120 Church Street, with the following condition: Church Street Marketplace Commission approval.
Thank you. Is there a second to this item?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Singh. Is there any discussion on the item? All in favor, then, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That is unanimous. Two more items. Item 3.5, please.
I move to approve the 2026-2027 first and third class liquor license applications for Thai in the Alley, 36 Thorson Way, with the following conditions: complete record checks and with all standard conditions.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Schachter. If there is no discussion on the item, we will go to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That is unanimous. And finally, item 3.6, Commissioner Broderick.
I move to approve the 2026-2027 outside consumption permit application for Thai in the Alley, 36 Thorson Way, with the following condition: complete record checks.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second. Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Schachter. Is there any discussion on this item? All right, we'll go to a vote then. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Seeing no other business before the Local Control Commission, and again, gratitude to our License Committee, our applicants, Lori Olberg, to you as always, as well as to our Fire Marshal's Office and Phil Edgerly in particular for their assistance with the License Committee's work. We will adjourn the Local Control Commission meeting at 6:57 p.m. and resume our City Council meeting at that same time. The next item on our City Council agenda is our deliberative agenda. And Councillor Broderick, will stick with you first because our first deliberative item is an indoor entertainment permit application from the License Committee.
I move to approve the 2026-2027 indoor entertainment permit application for Venetian Soda Lounge, 226 Pine Street, suite number 122, with all standard conditions.
Thank you, Councillor Broderick. I will just note, I think you said 226 Pine Street. I believe it's 266 Pine Street. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Schachter. Any discussion on the item? All in favor, then please say aye.
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 Are any opposed? That carries unanimously. So that now takes us to item 5.2, a resolution titled Ice Out of Burlington, co-sponsored by the full City Council. To introduce the item, though, I will turn the floor to Councillor McKnight.
Great. Thank you, President Travers. I move to waive the reading and adopt the resolution and ask for the floor back after a second.
Thank you. Second by Councillor Bergman. Councillor McKnight, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you. Before I begin, I want to first thank Council President Travers for your leadership on this issue, as well as my colleagues across the table for your great collaboration on this resolution. As folks may have observed, we often differ here on many issues, but tonight it's important to underline that we stand united in defending our neighbors, many of whom who have contacted us directly and asked us to stand together and do something to fight back against ICE. When hard, horrific things happen, I personally am someone who tries to look at the lessons we can learn in the hopes that we might be able to do better in the future. And watching federal immigration enforcement, or what I think is more accurately described as the modern-day Gestapo, watching them run amok across our nation, two lessons have really rung loud and clear for me. The first came after the tragic death of Alex Preddy, when I heard it described as a tipping point and as shocking. And while it was despicable, the truth is it was not shocking. For years, we have been told exactly what Trump's authoritarian regime would do and how they would do it. The shocking thing is how many people dismiss those warnings and how long we have allowed our democracy to tilt away from serving ordinary people towards serving oligarchs and the very rich and powerful instead. It's not a tipping point. We've been tipping. We have tipped for years. And the second lesson is the stark difference in reactions when tragedy strikes different communities. The deaths of Renee Nicole Good and Alex Preddy have justifiably prompted outrage and grief. And yet, Black and brown communities have long endured targeted enforcement, separation of families, and murderous violence, including the recent ICE actions that had devastating outcomes for people like Miramar Martinez, Linda Davis, and many, many more. And so we are left to confront a hard question. Do we value some lives more than others? I know my answer is a no. It's a hard no. I really hope our country's answer can become a no as well. But with all that said, if you are someone who is just now paying attention and who does find this shocking, your attention and your action are still welcome. It doesn't matter where you begin. We all have a role in protecting our neighbors and our democracy. And here in Burlington, we know something about resilience. We live in a place that tests you. We have long winters, a frozen lake, crusty windshields, and very dark mornings. All these tests make us sure, damn sure, we know what we are made of. And if it comes time to go toe-to-toe, ICE does not stand a chance against what we are made of here. You might think I'm saying we're tough, but in fact, I think our strength lies in just how neighborly we are. We check in, we dig each other out, we show up. Just like the courageous everyday people we've seen in Minneapolis who didn't ask this fight to come to their doorstep, but when it did, they were ready to stand together. And we will be as well. So let's talk quickly about what this resolution actually does, because we can't fight back with lessons alone. We need to take action. It affirms that ICE activities will not be supported by city facilities or resources. It reinforces that agents must have a valid judicial warrant to access protected spaces. It calls on our state and local officials to enforce protections against warrantless searches and surveillance. It supports access to critical legal counsel for those detained through immigration enforcement. And it ensures that our city is prepared, transparent, and accountable in the face of potential expanded enforcement. In sum, it uses all the tools that are locally available to us now to protect the rights, the safety, and the dignity of the people, of all the people who live here in Burlington. Because fear does not get to define this community, we get to define our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor McKnight. Councilor Bergman?
Thank you. First, I'm really glad that we're able to work together on this, and I know that as somebody who worked with you all on it, that we improved it in that process. So thank you. This is clearly timely, despite whatever the federal administration is saying about the reduction of presence in Minneapolis. We know that they have a deep commitment to engage in the type of activities that have ravaged this country from coast to coast. And so this is absolutely timely for us to do. We have engaged critical stakeholders on the ground who are supporting our immigrant and refugee communities. I think of groups like Migrant Justice. Our caucus has engaged the voices of immigrants and refugees in our community, like the Trusted Community Voices, and their perspectives help to inform this resolution. And we engaged the director of REIB, who provided critical feedback based on a very deep understanding of the experiences and needs of our immigrant and refugee community. And we, as a city and as a council, value the expertise of the REIB office to inform us, and that's exactly why we need to continue to support it being added to our charter. It has been raised tonight even that this is not a local issue, but it is always going to be a local issue to me to stand up and try to do our best to protect people. This is, frankly, I think, not the answer, because there is no single answer, and every time that things happen, they evolve and you have to deal with them. But it is, our position is a necessary step. And one of the fundamental reasons why it is a local issue is because of the perversion of the English language that happens every single day by an administration which is really, in my estimation, trying to destroy democracy in our country and establish a fascist dictatorship. That is my blunt assessment of what they are trying to do. And when they talk about people who are simply trying to observe as terrorists, when they weaponize the language that says that a person trying to just move out of the way and says, I'm not angry at you, is somehow a terrorist and trying to kill somebody. And they do this not once, but they do this hundreds of times. You know, they said that the worst of the worst is who they're trying to deport. And yet their own numbers, as reported in CBS, in a report that we have a partial statistic in here, disproves that. So it is an absolute local issue for us to stand up and defend the truth, the non-perversion of language. We can disagree, we can have hard, complicated struggles around this. And we have a few of them tonight that we'll continue to delve into. It's important for us to recognize that that is a local issue. If we cannot defend it here, if we cannot defend it here, we cannot defend it anywhere. I look forward to our unanimous support on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Bergman. Is there any other councilor that wishes to be recognized on this item? Councilor Grant?
I thank Councilor Bergman for his comments. I do believe we have gotten to a better place, but quite frankly, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the issues that I have with process, especially given some pretty disappointing emails from fellow councilors. I will say that it's been an ongoing issue regarding resolutions, regarding when they are initially brought forth, how they, even the first drafts, there is no collaboration. Like, it'll be said to the public that there's collaboration, but there isn't actually collaboration. So when we look at the first draft that we received, which was actually on February 4th, I'm going to be very blunt. My immediate reaction was that it was white savior BS. I was very upset that we could have a first draft, we could be talking about ICE and the impacts of ICE and not mention black or brown people at all. That's what happens when you don't collaborate with people. The draft came out on the 4th with saying that we should push for it on the May 9th meeting and that we could all come together. I appreciate that we were able to get more time on it, and that allowed the collaboration that should have been given in the first place. We're still struggling with this. And I think calling people names and emails, trying to distort the true narrative of how these resolutions come about is tremendously unfair, and it continues to show bias that we have on this council. Regarding the issue, I really thank the people, the REIB committee, and Migrant Justice, Trusted Community Voices, and others, community stakeholders that we did reach out to. They did help make this better. I do not disagree. I do not agree with the changing of some wording that was meant to make something, quote unquote, objectively, I can't remember exactly, but objectively, I believe that if we take, for example, the killing of Renee Good, that objectively is murder, and we should be using the term murdered. And so to change murder when these deaths have been either declared homicides or the government is not cooperating or is interfering with the investigation of multiple deaths, objectively, we can say murder, but apparently we don't have that courage, so we've settled on killing.
Point of order.
And I would like...
Sorry, Councilor Grant, yes?
If you want to pause her clock.
Yeah.
One, it's not germane to the issue. Two, it's disparaging the motivations of the council. As councilors.
Yeah. Thank you, Councilor Litwin, for the point of order. Councilor Grant, I think Councilor Litwin's point is well taken here. Your comments should be to the merits and the substance of the resolution and not continuing to attack the process behind it. And so we'll ask that you please focus your comments on what's germane to the motion here.
I believe it's germane, and I believe it speaks to the merits when we don't have the courage to use the appropriate words that express the situation that is occurring. I don't believe that's an appropriate point of order.
You're on the clock, Councilor Grant.
Okay. So as I said, I believe that it's a cowardly decision, and we have to do better. Finally, this is definitely a local issue. This is a local issue because we have already, just because we don't have a surge doesn't mean people haven't been affected. We have already seen individuals that have been taken in our community. We already have ICE moving through our community. Thank you to people who spoke at public forum to bring up the issue around movements through the airport. And I will also say we have to think about, we as a city rely on the hospitality industry. We rely on visitors. You think people are going to come to visit a city that's under an ICE surge? That's not going to happen. So we're going to see extreme economic effects if this were to happen to us.
Councilor Singh?
Thank you, Council President Travers. I want to let people know in the public that the resolution process begins with us, but it requires inputs from all colleagues on both sides of the aisle. After drafting, we consult one another and relevant department heads to seek input. I reviewed this resolution before it was shared more broadly, and I agreed it was a strong starting point. Feedback from the administration, my council colleagues, the Office of REIB helped strengthen the language, and that is how the drafting process should work. I also want to acknowledge what was missing in the initial draft. I overlooked some of those items and appreciate that clauses were added. At the same time, we must leave space for input without drawing conclusions that could hinder our work. Recognizing past harms is important, and many of us are continuing to grow in that understanding. I'm often struck how frequently the term Islamophobia comes to our deliberations. And if I were asked the people on this body who was the first person killed of a hate crime after 9/11, his name was Balbir Singh Sodhi because he wore a turban. He was a Sikh American who was killed right after 9/11. Yet when we speak of Islamophobia, I never hear the mention of anti-Sikh hate crimes. Should I be offended? I choose not to be. When people work to combat hate and create positive change, they often focus on moving forward, and many miss other important contexts. That does not mean those harms are unimportant. It means that we all have room in our awareness and understanding to grow. We must strive to make this city a space that is welcoming, where we continue to learn to grow and be better human beings with each other. I want to share a story, a true story that my father told me when he was teaching me these lessons. During partition of India, there was so much sectarian violence, and militant fundamentalists came to his village to convert the Sikhs. And the person they chose was the Sikh that trimmed his beard because they figured he wasn't devout enough. And they beat him in front of the whole village and then slaughtered him because he refused to renounce his religion. In front of the whole village, in front of children, in front of my father as a 15-year-old. The fundamentalists left the village because they figured the least devout of the Sikhs, we couldn't convert him. And they fled the village and left everybody to live. And I said to my father, what gave that person that strength? And he said, that's not the lesson, son. He says the lesson is you never know who the person will be that stands between you and the sword. You don't know who the person will be that stands between the village and the sword. So I want to tell people out there, no matter what you think or what you believe before this point, if what you're seeing out there is not the way you believe this country can be, this place is a place where we welcome you. Even if you've made mistakes in the past, and even if you believed other things beforehand, we still have the opportunity to live and grow together. And as my father said, the important question isn't when and why. The question is the person who is that. And we will never know who that person is that stands between us and the sword until that time comes. So I welcome anybody who believes what's going on is wrong, no matter what you've believed in the past. This city is for you, and that's why we are passing a resolution like this.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. Is there any other councillor that wishes to get in the queue on this item? All right, Councillor Litwin.
Made it just in time, thank you. I appreciate all the comments tonight, and particularly those of Councillor Bergman. I share a lot of his perspectives. Last meeting, we talked about crossing guards and libraries, and this meeting, we're talking about some really heavy stuff. But in the end, what I appreciate most is how much folks have come together to try and at least start the process so that we are prepared, or at least a little bit better prepared as a community in the event that this becomes an even more local issue than it already is. People, just in my own apartment building, I want to thank my property management for putting up a sign that forbids certain law enforcement activity coming into my apartment building so that my neighbors, many of whom are from around the world, feel a little bit safer coming home and going to the grocery store. And I worry about them. So I want them to know that I worry about them. I worry that this resolution also, because of our limited legal authority, can't go as far as I wish it could. Because I think in Massachusetts, for example, they're taking steps to try to keep ICE out of even more facilities. And so I urge our state to make sure we are very prepared for that potentiality. ICE, this organization, is acting as though they are above the law. No one is above the law. Focus groups in Minnesota right now currently are describing their experiences with ICE like the Stasi or Gestapo. We have unsigned warrants that are being executed. We have American citizens that are being dragged out of their homes. ICE doesn't get to decide who gets rule of law and who doesn't, and neither do presidents. I'm concerned about our own tax dollars and our own resources being used in violent manner against the American people. Several of my recommendations for whereas clauses are in here, and I appreciate integrating them, including that children have, or the arrest of children have gone up 600% per month since the Biden administration, and 650% since the Biden administration for deporting people with no criminal background. So for folks who think that ICE is doing their job, I assure you, they're not. And they're not making our communities safer. What we do hear from these focus groups in Minnesota is that people want immigration law enforced and followed, but they want due process. They don't want citizens dragged out of their home, unclothed in the cold. And I think ultimately the goal here is to sow seeds of chaos and fear so that we do not go out and exercise our constitutional freedoms to protest, etc. And so there can't be a sense of order when people who are who aren't following the legal process, or excuse me, who are following the legal process and are going in for hearings are being detained or disappeared. So how can we hope for a sense of order? People don't know where they stand, even when they want to follow the law. Last weekend, Councillor Singh joined me door knocking, and we went to one home, and I had a pretty jarring experience with somebody who was very quick to say how wonderful ICE was and how they were happy with them and wanted to write them a check. And hurt my heart a little bit, but to the next few houses down, I met a veteran who whipped the door open and said, "Are you a Republican?" And I didn't know how this was going to go, but I said, "No, I'm a Democrat." And he said, "Good." And he said, "Because if you were, I'd kick you out because I'm an American above anything else." And so I guess with over 50% of all the votes for Donald Trump coming from the New North End, my plea to my neighbors who voted for him and continue to support Trump is to step back and look objectively. We can have immigration enforcement while respecting the rule of law, the constitutional right to due process. Whether we've reached it or not, the true American dream is our commitment and our willingness to the rule of law, freedom from oppressive regime, and commitment to inalienable rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Litwin. Is there any other councillor that has not been recognized on this item that wishes to be? All right. Then I believe we'll go to a vote on the item. I suppose before going to a vote on the item, I do just want to note and echo the appreciation stated by other councilors for the collaborative effort on this. It's a rare item that comes before this agenda with the co-sponsorship of the full City Council. I know that we have our differences from time to time here, but this is one where I'm glad we can speak with a unified and collective voice. It was my privilege to take the first crack at a first draft on this resolution, largely based off of similar resolutions that have been passed in other communities around the state. I very much appreciate the feedback that I've received from my colleagues and from the mayor's office, both Democrats and progressives, with respect to how this resolution could be improved, and I'm proud of the place that it's landed. That is what the drafting process is for. And I'm disappointed that today's comments have been used for the purpose of, in some respect, attacking a process and bringing this resolution to a more perfect place. But I'm glad that ultimately we have an opportunity to vote on it collectively this evening. With no other comments, we will go to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are any opposed? That is unanimous. We'll now turn to item 5.3. Councillor Grant, I'll ask that you please come to order. We'll now turn to item 5.3. It's an item on the proposed joint committee to review inclusionary zoning recommendations regarding Plan BTV and CEDO. We are joined this evening by representatives from the Office of City Planning, Sarah Morgan and Charles Dillard. Sarah and Charles, am I correct that you may want to present on this item before going to a vote on it? Great.
We do have a couple of slides prepared.
Great. So whenever you're prepared, the floor is yours.
Good evening. While Sarah's bringing that up, bringing up the slides, thanks for having us. We're here tonight to share a proposal to create a joint inclusionary zoning committee for an upcoming complex zoning amendment process on inclusionary zoning. As Sarah will tell you, this mimics the process we use with your support, with council support for the neighborhood code. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah, who's going to lead this.
Great, thanks. As Charles mentioned, we're talking about a proposed joint committee on inclusionary zoning. And just a reminder, on January 13th, Mayor Mulvaney Stanek had announced the launch of Burlington's 2026 housing strategy, and a major component of these three central pillars is modernizing the inclusionary zoning ordinance, primarily found in Article 9. Bear with me. And in the coming months, the city and city staff are undertaking a major update to this inclusionary zoning ordinance. And the goal of this is really to encourage and support that high quality development and sustainably resourced affordable housing. And updates to this ordinance, there are recent recommendations, there are past recommendations, and the intention of this update is to reflect current market conditions, national best practices, as well as Burlington's community goals and values. There's currently a cross-departmental working group underway that's been formed of representatives of the Office of City Planning, CEDO, DFA, as well as DPI, and we are currently synthesizing research, analyses, and prior recommendations related to inclusionary zoning that have been made over the past several years. In addition, we're exploring new strategies not previously contemplated. As part of this joint Planning Commission Ordinance Committee proposal, I want to reflect briefly on the success of the Neighborhood Code Joint Committee. I recognize a few of you that were on this committee and made it a success. This took place, the committee met 8 times between October and December of 2023 to review the proposed neighborhood code and modify recommendations originally proposed by staff, and really have a lot of thorough conversations about the recommendations that were ultimately made in the amendment. And the benefits of having this joint structure is that it allows the city to streamline review, promote shared understanding between the bodies, and ensure that the policy technical and implementation considerations are integrated early in the amendment process. Staff proposes this joint committee to meet monthly, and the scope of the committee is consider the background context, stakeholder input, really a lot of the things that we have been discussing internally and with our partners over the last several years, and also provide feedback to city staff with the ultimate goal of, after the joint committee process, following a public hearing of the Planning Commission, the committee would then forward a recommendation to from the full joint committee directly to the City Council, and this would be in lieu of a separate review by the City Council Ordinance Committee. I have a few quick slides prepared on the proposed framework. I'm not going to go into too much detail, and this is really also communicated through the memo provided. But really, we are looking to have a pre-kickoff work session to really build that baseline understanding of how inclusionary zoning is done in Burlington, followed by a full committee kickoff, introduction of the draft amendment, and beginning the second phase of the committee process of reviewing and discussing language, followed ultimately by a public hearing of the Planning Commission. And one important thing to note, and if other councilors from the previous joint committee have any reflections, but I welcome them, but following the committee process, we had a public hearing of the Planning Commission itself, and that was a vote specifically of the Planning Commission, but followed by a letter in full support from the Joint Committee to the Council. That would then be followed by a public hearing and recommendation from the full Council. At this time, staff is requesting that the City Council accept the memo prepared by staff, the communication, and place it on file and refer any comments to the Joint Inclusionary Zoning Committee. And we welcome any other discussion or questions.
Great. Thank you very much for that presentation. Councilor Bergman, as chair of the Ordinance Committee, I would turn to you first. Are there any comments on your end?
Well, let me, yeah, I've got some comments about it because I think that the requested motion or action actually isn't clear enough. And perhaps I will take a stab at that and then get the floor back.
Okay.
So the motion would be that I'd move to accept the communication, place it on file, and approve that there be a so-called joint committee that calls for each body to vote as individual bodies, with this committee also setting its schedule at its first meeting and referring any comments to this so-called joint inclusionary zoning committee to that committee. And after a second, let me just explain.
Understood. Is there a second to that motion? Second by Councilor Barlow.
Thank you.
Councilor Bergman.
So the initial neighborhood code committee did not create a 9-person, I think it is, or however many people are on the ordinance, are on the planning commission. There's 7. So didn't create a 10-member body, a singular body where you had, to get 6 votes to pass. Each body acted separately. Now, I see that as functionally not really a singular committee, but a way to get the work done in an expeditious way. I can support that. I have reported to this body, to the public, that we have put out a gazillion ordinances over the last term and done it very efficiently and effectively, and we have our very own schedule to maintain with essential items like the U of M housing that's coming up on Thursday. So while I like the ideas that are put forward in the schedule there, I am not ready, and I think it is absolutely inappropriate for this body to just without having the sit down with the individual members to like adopt a meeting agenda or a meeting schedule that commits the council to be meeting, once a month on this when we've got other things. I mean, we're meeting right now twice a month, okay? And we're getting out the work. We still will have things in there. This is not to say that we cannot do this. It's to say that we should not decide that right now without sitting down and thinking about it. Fact of the matter is, if there's a lot of work and it's going to take a lot of time, then we as non-full-time representatives of the people, although we do work basically full-time, it would seem to me, can commit to doing that, because unlike places like New York City, where people will meet, can meet every day, right, because that's their job, and they can set that up as their committees, we're not doing that. And I am not sure that the ordinance committee, as presently constituted, and I thank them all the time for the work that they put in to this meeting twice a month with, 2+ hour meetings each time and getting this stuff really done, can commit to a third one. So my motion is to say, okay, basically what it means is that we set this committee up, sure, we're each going to vote individually, and we'll figure out the calendar when it comes, and then we'll try to pick up the work. But I think that it's important from the onset to let staff know that this is sort of the framework that we need to have, right? Because as Councillor Bushier, former Councillor Bushier, said, we have to have engagement. So this is not a dog and pony show. This is not a rubber stamp. I don't know what the proposals are from inclusionary zoning, but as the initial sponsor of the successful inclusionary zoning ordinance that we passed in 1990, I take great pride in that. It's essential that we have an inclusionary zoning so that when rich people's houses are built, that working people's houses are built. That's what I said then when I worked at the Free Press for $8.50 an hour and was on the council, and that's what I say right now. So we've got a lot of work to do, but as long as everybody understands the framework, then I think that we will be in a good place. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bergman. Is there any other councillor with comments or questions on this item? Councillor Carpenter.
I appreciate,
Schachter.
what, I'm sorry?
Sorry, and then Councillor Schachter. So
Okay.
Councillor Carpenter, go
I
ahead.
appreciate Councilor Bergman's perspective and agree, and I serve on the ordinance committee, and we were doing a lot of good work. So all I hear him saying is we just have to be flexible about the schedule, and I would say that to my colleagues on the Planning Commission. They signed up for one meeting a month at a particular Tuesday or whatever day they meet, and just a friendly that we may need to adjust that. That's all we're saying, I think, and I hope you understand that. And another comment, which is, and maybe staff can think about it, are there pieces to bite off and chew? You get to a big group, I mean, that's 11 of us. Are there pieces you could chew, that some of us could go meet on and bring back? And we didn't really use that format with neighborhood code, but just ponder, maybe there's sub-issues that there might be value in 3 or 4 of us working on it, not all of us together and bringing it back. I do think this is a great idea, because it's an awkward process when you have 2 bodies having to sort of approve the same thing. So not being redundant is very welcomed, but we should just figure that out.
Thank you, Councillor Carpenter. Before turning to Councillor Schachter, just Charles and Sarah, did you have any comments that you wanted to add here?
Yes, I did want to clarify that one of the reasons that we're proposing a monthly schedule is the first Planning Commission meeting of the month we're hoping to dedicate to our current workload of different zoning amendments, as well as the Plan BTV 2050 comprehensive planning efforts that are underway, and dedicate that second meeting of the month of the Planning Commission to a joint committee meeting so that we can continue our workflow while simultaneously focusing on the inclusionary zoning amendment monthly. One of the reasons that we have been trying to lock in some of the dates is really to help our Planning Commission schedule out over the next 9 months or so, but completely understand the different workloads and different meeting schedules that are required.
Thank you. Councilor Schachter.
Thank you, President Travers, and thank you, Charles and Sarah and your team for exceptional work always on behalf of our city. I'm really excited to see this IZ work get underway. I think it's really important. I'm thrilled that it's part of the mayor's housing strategy. And I know that sentiment is shared by many, that this is a really important moment for us as a city. And in the interest of wanting to make sure we get to do this hopefully once, right? And it has a real potential for impact. What I wanted to just flag is to make sure that, and my ask is that there's opportunities for community input and real housing subject matter experts to be invited into these conversations, whether that's through ideation sessions or being somehow formally a part of the deliberations and the discussions. I think of VPOP, I think of Let's Build Homes, I think of Building Burlington's Future, I think of many groups, there's many more, who really do live and breathe this often. And so I think it's important to think about how they are able to participate, and anyone who wants to be a part of it, but particularly holding space for subject matter experts. So I just wanted to name that, and I'd love to see that be part of sort of how this all unfolds. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Schachter. Any other councilors with questions or comments? Councilor Litwin.
Yeah, it's actually just a quick question while I have you in the hot seat. First, I want to thank, I actually agree with Councilors Bergman and Carpenter about the scheduling. The ordinance committee has been busy, and so I appreciate that. I also would just want to add to Councilor Schachter's comments that for me it's really important to get the developers at the table who are the ones building these units as well. And so one of the questions I have for you, and just so the public can learn along with me, correct me, but I believe our buyout option for IZ right now as it stands is like $100,000 a unit. No. Good, you can correct me.
You are speaking about the payment in lieu, I think. It's more complicated in that it's tiered depending on the number of units, but it's much lower. It actually starts at about $35,000.
Oh. Yeah. Okay, well, that's even worse than I thought. So, you know, I really appreciate that we're having this conversation, or we're getting this conversation started around inclusionary zoning, because we know that it's now $500,000 or more, if not, to build a unit. And so is your office seeing more people or developers taking advantage of that because it will take them so much longer to recoup their investments on an IZ unit than it would be to just take that payment in lieu option?
I don't have the data right in front of me, but that's something we have been talking about. And yes, I think we do see quite a few developers taking the payment in lieu option where it's available. It's not available in all census tracts. But yes, we know that Burlington's payment in lieu fee has not changed, has not evolved like many communities have. We also do not have an annual recalibration process to sort of relate that fee to changes in the market, interest rates, construction costs,
Right.
inflation, that sort of thing. So that's definitely one of the components of this work.
Okay, great. So just, I guess to wrap it up with a bow a little bit, that's something that I'm going to be really interested in seeing come out of this process. I think the public will be interested in seeing, because I bet a lot of the members of the public just didn't even know that there was an option to just sort of not build the IZ unit. And just given the cost of labor and materials and what it does to build a unit at this point, we desperately need to reevaluate what that looks like so that we can make sure that we are building the thousands of units that we are needing to build based on the state legislative, I think it was the Home Act, but also just the mayor's plan as well. So I'll certainly be looking to see some real movement on that. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Councillor Litwin. Is there any other councillor with questions or comments on this item? Councillor Newbeeser.
Thank you, Council President, and sorry, I'm not there in person. Just the joys of having a 1 and 4-year-old at home. These few months of the year, I just find myself constantly sick, and now we've got our 4-year-old with the flu, so I'm remote again. I appreciate this, and I'm really excited that we'll be talking about, as a council and as a city, inclusionary zoning. And I guess I just wanted to lay out one. I'm not actually concerned, and maybe folks will disagree with this, but I'm not concerned that we bring the interests of for-profit private developers to the table as we have this conversation. I may lose that argument in the grand scheme, but I just want to throw that out there. And then the second piece is that there are really good things we can do, and I'm interested to hear and follow this and learn more. But want to be clear that I am completely opposed and don't think we're going down this path, and I hope we don't go down a path where we're having any sort of conversation around watering down or rolling back requirements as laid out in IZ currently. So looking forward to seeing how we can innovate and appreciate staff's work on it. Thank you.
Understand your personal circumstances. It seems like the last few weeks, everyone in Burlington has had the flu. So I hope folks in your house feel better soon. Any other councillors with questions or comments on this? Councillor Bergman, I will just note that I was chair of the Ordinance Committee the last time the Ordinance Committee met jointly with the Planning Commission, and agree that I found it to be efficient and expeditious in dealing with these issues, but similarly then, as I believe you're proposing now, ensured that the two bodies still maintained separately, that the Planning Commission voted on what the Planning Commission should vote on, that the Ordinance Committee maintained its right to, and in fact did, after the Joint Commission process, continue its own meetings as an Ordinance Committee once it reached the council level and went through the public hearing process. And I note that both as an endorsement of what you've put forward, but also to note that when we did that previously, we did not take a vote as the council to formally endorse the process. I think it is a good idea, but just in the interest of not delegitimizing the work that was done previously, I do just want to note that on the advice of the city attorney's office at that time, that our proceeding as a joint committee, even without the formal endorsement of the council, was considered appropriate as long as we met as separate bodies and warned our meetings separately and voted separately and so on. So I just did want to note that for the record. With that, is there any further comment on the item?
Only to say that I will.
Sorry, could you?
Only to say that I will be emailing Lori the complicated memo, the complicated motion that I made, because I do think it should be legitimized as an action, since you call it a joint committee, and if you don't act to create one, then there are questions about its legitimacy. So thank you.
Understood. Anything further, Charles and Sarah? Okay. So then we'll go to a vote. All in favor of the motion as stated by Councillor Bergman, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are any opposed? That carries unanimously. So we will very much look forward to the work of the now joint Inclusionary Zoning Committee. That brings us now to item 5.4, a resolution titled Advancing Tax Fairness. The primary sponsor of this is Councillor Schachter. And Councillor Schachter, I would welcome your introducing the item.
Thank you, Council President Travers. I move to waive the reading and adopt this resolution, and would love the floor back after a second.
Thank you. Second by Councillor Bergman. Councillor Schachter, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm glad to be introducing this tax fairness resolution this evening with strong bipartisan support. Thank you in particular to Councilor Bergman, who worked hard with his caucus, and to my colleagues on all sides of the aisle. This was a many days long effort to keep this important work moving forward, and knowing that we're on a tight timeline in potentially bringing a binding question forward to voters either next fall or next town meeting day. It is no secret that we have an affordability crisis in this community, and we have a lot of more work to do to have a more equitable tax system. And last year, the mayor convened a tax fairness working group that met regularly throughout the year and brought a final report back to council in October. I commend the mayor's convening of that group, the work that they did, the report that was brought forward, and the important possibilities that it contains for helping us explore what steps we can take to have a more fair and equitable tax system. And while ultimately a majority of the council did not support putting a non-binding advisory question about one of these recommendations, the universal homestead tax exemption, on this year's town meeting day ballot, that does not mean that this work stops. I think I heard every one of us commit on the floor that evening that we took a vote regarding the advisory question, that while we did not necessarily agree on our readiness to bring a question forward to voters pertaining to only one of the Tax Fairness Working Group's recommendations, that we supported the work continuing to move forward, and we supported a robust public process around it, and to keep on the timeline of hopefully bringing a binding tax fairness charter change question to voters in either November 2026 or March 2027. And so in that spirit, this resolution presents an opportunity for us to create an ad hoc Tax Fairness Council Committee to fully vet all the recommendations from the Tax Fairness Working Group, to engage more deeply with the mayor's administration and staff, as well as external tax policy experts, and again, to potentially bring a binding charter change forward to voters. So I look forward to what this could do for our community, to the robust public process with diverse and extensive stakeholder engagement that I hope can come from it. And I'm grateful for the bipartisan commitment to keeping the Tax Fairness Working Group's work moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Schachter. Councilor Bergman?
Thank you. So first, I want to appreciate the changes that were made. I think that the resolution is greatly improved, and that is not just in its content, but in the ability for us to get to the actual real work without cutting each other's heads off. I believe that there is a real possibility that we can come up with at least one tax reform proposal, proposal that is absolutely necessary for our moderate and lower income residents. And that includes homeowners, and it includes not just the low income folks, but people that are considered to be, moderate income, people making $80,000, right, a year. I mean, there's like 80% of the people, I think, in this city are making under $80,000, and yet, that's a decent wage. When at least the way it was, like I was talking about when I worked in production in the Free Press, making $8 an hour after 10 years. So it's really seriously important that we take this for homeowners, including moderate income homeowners that we all have in all of our parts of the city, and renters. And one size is not going to fit all. I think that the committee can be a vehicle to fight for tax fairness, and I hope that we can get this work done that's going to benefit our middle and working class residents. Hopefully we'll continue to work collaboratively on this. This is going to be a hard lift, but let me just say, and you've heard me say this before, the perfect cannot be the enemy of the good, nor can a single bullet solve the problem. This is going to be, and so there is going to be timing issues. There is going to be choices that we're going to have to make, right? And if we are to think that one solution is going to do that, then I would advise us to be novelists and not politicians. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Bergman. Is there any other councilor that wishes to weigh in on this item? Councilor Barlow.
Thank you, President Travers. I appreciated Councilor Schachter's comment that when we voted on the advisory ballot question, whether or not we were going to proceed with that, for most of us, it wasn't a question of whether or not there was a good proposal. It was that we needed more work. We needed more robust process to include stakeholders who, for whatever reason, didn't have an opportunity to weigh in during the tax fairness working group discussions and subsequent recommendations. I think this process will also provide the public an opportunity to weigh in with more information than they would have had on just a binary ballot question on one of the recommendations. So I view this action tonight as a logical follow-on to the tax fairness working group that continues the review process for potential refinements of the tax fairness working group recommendation. And I think it shows a shared commitment to continuing those discussions on policy changes that strive to make our tax system fairer and more affordable for all taxpayers. So I'll be supporting this.
Thank you, Councilor Barlow. Councilor Carpenter?
Thanks. I don't want to repeat what my colleagues said. I appreciate, and all along I've wanted us to have a committee, and I'm so happy that we just get the yes and just get the work done. It is very complex. And just sort of an additional thing to ask of us as we go through this process, sort of putting a few notes to self around what are the other issues we need to deal with the state. I mean, there's big issues like, should we all have an income tax? But barring that, there's things like, is the $400,000 on the homestead credit the right number for the value of the house? The black box of how they determine the homestead credit is something I hope we can pry into a little bit, because that may help us in our own decision-making about what's a fair credit.
Thank you, Councilor Carpenter. Is there any other councilor that wishes to be recognized on this item? Councilor Grant? And then Newbeeser?
So, a couple of things. Another resolution. First draft goes out less than a week for the meeting that some of my fellow councilors want to vote on, which leads to a request for delay, which was denied, because apparently we have to get a record right, quote unquote.
Councilor Grant, I'm going to ask
That's in the emails. That's in your
Councilor
emails.
Grant, I'm going to ask you
That
you
is
please
in
keep
the
your
emails.
comments germane to the substance
It
of the
is
resolution.
germane. It is germane. The process is germane.
If you
And
feel
if you
you have-
can't change the process, Councilor President, I have a right to continue to talk about it.
I'm going to ask that you please keep your comments germane to the substance of the resolution. If you feel you have not had sufficient time to weigh in on the merits of the resolution, that is germane. But to continue to attack what you view as
It's not
deficiencies
attack,
in
it's
the
stating
process.
facts. It's stating facts. The emails were sent. Anyone who wants to do a FOIA request on this, have fun. The emails are sent on a certain date. The meetings are on a certain date. Deadlines to get things on the agenda are on a certain date. Reclaiming some of my time, please.
Councilor Grant, your comments.
Reclaiming some of my time, please.
You have 3 minutes left, Councilor Grant. I ask that you keep your comments germane. I will give Councilor Grant her 5 minutes, but I will ask that the comments please be germane to the substance of the resolution. Councilor Bergman, you have a point of order?
I do. I object to the chair's ruling that it's out of order and the self-initiation of that. I think that the short fuse, so to speak, that exists when Councilor Grant is making legitimate concerns that are appropriate for this item is not.
It's not a properly stated point of order, Councilor.
I think it. So the point of order is that you are abusing your power as the chair.
Okay, that's absolutely not a properly stated point of order. It is well within the chair's authority to, even without a point of order, to call out when a councilor is not acting in accordance with our rules that requires that comments be germane to the substance of the matter before us. And that is my ruling, that the comments here continuing to attack their colleagues in the process leading up to it is not germane to the substance of the resolution. That is my order, and we'll ask that all councilors please proceed in accordance with it. So, Councilor Grant, I did take your time here, so I'm happy to return the timer here to your 5 minutes. But again, we'll ask that comments please be germane to the matter and motion before us.
What people don't like is too many committees. What we have here, as was commented during our discussions that some of us had around this particular resolution, is we are creating another committee to study the work of a committee after a year of their work. It was a bipartisan committee. It contained tax experts. There were opportunities to be involved, to ask questions. And I do believe that the quote unquote, with the hope of bringing a binding tax fairness charter change to voters in November 26th or March 27th. So with the hope, it reminded me immediately of some things that we see at the federal level. So when it's been mentioned before that what's happening at the federal level is happening here, it's like, oh, give us this now, and maybe we will do something later. We had an opportunity to involve stakeholders. Stakeholders are the voters of the city of Burlington. They would have had an opportunity to vote on the most agreed upon option. And I think it would have been important to allow a vote on that particular item, and that would have engaged the public, and that would have brought forth a lot of feedback, because that's what happens when people discuss ballot items. So we have a tradition in our city of allowing people's voice to be heard, and we're walking back on that tradition. I would like to see more than hope, but apparently we couldn't get there, which is, in my mind, gravely regretful. I don't think the idea that the ballot item was binary, I mean, it was in the sense that you were voting yes or no, but to gauge how people felt about that particular idea would have been important. That would have been an important piece of information. And now we're denied that information, and we're supposed to go into another committee. I want to thank the mayor for her work. I want to thank the mayor for putting together the tax advisory group in order to address a major concern of the residents of this city. We had plenty of talk in the prior administration about how high taxes were, but we didn't have any solutions. And I just feel this doesn't put us coming any closer. I don't think it makes the people of Burlington feel any better. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. Councillor Barlow?
I just wanted to respond to a couple of Councillor Grant's.
Councillor Barlow, were you recognized previously on this item?
I was.
Okay, just in the interest of following the right order here, do you mind if Councillor Newbeezer, I believe you had your hand raised. Do you wish to be recognized on this item? And then I'll ask if there's any other councillors that want to be recognized the first time.
I did, Council President. Thank you very much.
Yep.
I just want to say briefly, I appreciated the changes that were made to get us to a place where I think the majority of this body will be supportive, and that where we can get to a place of bipartisan support, and appreciate the opportunity to co-sponsor the resolution. I am supportive of this, as I said, but I also want to be clear about what this is in the process of these conversations. We tonight are passing a resolution, not on tax policy, which prioritizes the needs of working and middle-class residents. We're not in agreement yet there, but we do have agreement, which is important, on the terms of negotiation, so to speak, between the caucuses on this council. And I think that's going to be helpful to moving forward items that, depending on where those discussions land, we can hopefully get to a place where we are making our tax system more fair for working and middle-class folks in this city, and the 80 to 90% of us who would benefit from those changes in the city. So again, appreciate that we're moving this forward, and look forward to what happens with the outcome of these discussions.
Thank you, Councillor Newbeezer. Is there any councillor that has not been recognized? Yes, Councillor Singh.
I wanted to thank my colleague, Councillor Schechter, for bringing this forward, and I appreciate Councillor Bergman and your work on this to get it to a place where we could be hopefully in all agreement on something regarding tax fairness. You know, when this first came up before, you know, my reservations with it first was the tax fairness working group. It wasn't a committee. Didn't have vast public input. You know, that part of it, hopefully we can have by having this committee. I also want to point out that, you know, at the state level, property tax relief is done on a system based on ability to pay. You know, the property tax prebates, as they're commonly called, are based on your ability to pay. Nothing that in the binary question that was put on the ballot brought that into account. And I think anything that we want to work towards equity, I believe ability to repay has to be put into that equation. And to my councillor colleague's comments, Councillor Carpenter, you know, it is somewhat of a black box about how that tax credit is given per household per year. You know, it's often, you know, in the real estate business, it's a moving target when we hit this time of year. We don't know what that's going to be. And, you know, to study a policy like this with a one-size-fits-all solution is not, I don't think, prudent for a body to take tax policy in that fashion. And that's the way I felt, you know, just a universal exception doesn't get to those items that I just discussed. And I really think that this is an opportunity to really do that heavy lifting. And I really believe that this body is up to the task.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. Is there any councillor that has not been recognized a first time that wishes to be recognized on this item? Councillor Litwin.
Thanks. I appreciate Councillor Singh's comments. I won't repeat anything he said because it was helpful. You know, there just wasn't a lot of process, and that's why I think forming this ad hoc working committee will bring us, as Councillor Newbeezer said, hopefully to a better place. The tax fairness, you know, working group were, you know, mayoral appointees, and it was not a public meeting, and most of the councillors at this table weren't allowed into that meeting. So we do actually need to have transparency around this, particularly when we're talking about a policy that would have moved around over $100 million of tax burden. And, you know, there's been some talk that the people who voted no on putting this on the ballot, that somehow we were stopping this work. And so I think this makes it clear that we're not. The question I voted no on was a question of, you know, should we keep looking at the thing we're already looking at? To the ongoing comments that this is a bipartisan committee, you know, I wouldn't describe it that way. So I do look forward to what comes out of this committee and this process so that we can get solutions that take into account everyone that lives in Burlington, everybody that that needs tax relief at various levels of income, not just folks who own homes, and that we are mindful about taking such drastic steps, and that we do it methodically and not in a rushed manner, which is what I said months ago I felt we were doing. So this, for me, gets us in a much better place, and I appreciate that, and thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Litwin. Before turning to councillors for a second round, Mayor, I see your hand raised. Would you like to be recognized on this item?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Thank you.
Please go ahead.
Council President Travers. I just want to bring the public's attention back to the fairness working group that I appointed over a year ago, because it's being brought back up again, and I want to make sure folks are clear about the hard work and the composition of this working group. And I want to again offer my deep appreciation. You can find the list of members on the city website. It was half city staff who work on financial matters and tax policy. It was also half community members, which included the former city council president, Karen Paul, as well as 2 different members from each of this current body and caucus. It was always my effort, and it has been with advisory groups, to offer a seat for both members of the caucus in the real spirit of collaboration and bipartisanship when we develop and dig into more complex issues, which include tax policy and how a municipality actually works towards affordability, when most, if not all, affordability measures related to tax policy is held by the state. This is hard work, it's complex work, and the recommendations were very sound, and there were multiple recommendations beyond the exemption, the homestead exemption idea, for which is being mostly talked about tonight. So I recommend that people take a look at this hard work. It reflects also work that had a lot of process behind it and research by city staff to support the questions and the deliberations by these community members and staff. And the report was brought to this body in October with the spirit of hoping that the Charter Change Committee would do some work. The timing was tight for an actual charter change for a March ballot, which we all knew. But again, it was brought in the spirit of starting conversations. So in that, I am glad that the council, with bipartisan interest tonight, is looking forward to moving this forward. I think our residents expect us to work together. And this is hard work, and I hope we move with diligence and purpose in the coming months, because the next deadlines will be upon us rather quickly if we really do want to move something for a November special election, because we are well positioned with the state elections being in November to bring questions to voters as soon as November. And I think all of us know, as folks are door knocking right now, know that affordability is top of mind for everyone. So I hope we can put the partisan stuff aside, work on behalf of all of our residents, and get to work on this tax policy work and the back and forth, and simply get to work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Is there any councillor that was not recognized the first time on this item that wishes to be? Okay. Councillor Barlow, did you have some further comments on the item?
Just a couple briefly. And I agree with the mayor that we did have a lot of discussion. We had a lot of support from city staff in our deliberations on the Tax Fairness Working Group. But those meetings were private meetings. They weren't open to the public. And in my view, and I've said this at other meetings when we talked about the recommendations that came from that group, we were missing some key stakeholders who would be impacted by the tax policy changes that would arise from the universal exemption. So, you know, I think the work we did on that working group is a good start, but I think when we're talking about a major change like this, like Councillor Litwin mentioned, it's $100 million worth of tax liability that's getting shifted around. If we take a few more months and try to refine the idea, make it better, and make sure that we get the input from the public and we get input from those key stakeholders, like, for instance, rental property owners and commercial property owners who would be impacted by these things, just to see what their perspectives are. I think it's worth us taking that time. And we may come back to voters with something that looks like what the advisory question was going to be, but maybe we would have a different limit, and there may be some other aspects to it that we would try to include in it. Like Councilor Carpenter's had a couple of ideas about trying to put some income sensitivity to that exemption. So I think we can perfect this more before we bring it to voters, and it's worth us taking the time to do it. So I'm supportive of this work. I'm appreciative of the work that was done by the Tax Fairness Working Group. We worked hard for several months, and we considered a lot of things. So I think this is just a little bit of sort of icing that we need to put on that process to make sure it's done properly. So that's all.
Thank you, Councilor Barlow. Is there any other councilor that wishes to be recognized again on this item? All right. We will, Councilor Grant, you had used all of your time, I believe, but I'll give you a little bit of time here.
Thought I had 107.
Okay,
I
all
noted
right.
it.
Sure. We'll provide you a minute.
Thank you. I would like to say and emphasize that per the comments made by the mayor, it is always very intentional to make sure that both caucuses are represented in the groups of advisors. It was done similarly with the group that reviewed community safety issues. So there was that opportunity to receive information from the representatives of the caucus. And I think it is unfair to say that the process wasn't transparent. And I get concerned when we are primarily always looking for extra input from property owners and commercial owners, and we really need to make sure that for working people and renters, they're also included in a ballot item, would have gotten feedback from all those people on that one option. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Grant. I think we will try to go to a vote then on the item. All in favor of the motion made by Councilor Schechter, please say aye.
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 No.
I'm sorry, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Okay. Because we do have two councilors online and have a divided vote, the open meeting law requires that we call for a roll call vote, and to that end, the clerk will please call the roll.
Councilor Barlow?
Yes.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Broderick?
Yes.
Councilor Carpenter?
Yes.
Councilor Grant?
No.
Councilor Kane?
Yes.
Councilor Litwin?
Yes.
Councilor McKnight?
Yes.
Councilor Newbeezer?
Yes.
Councilor Schechter?
Yes.
Councilor Singh?
Yes.
City Council President Travers?
Yes.
11 ayes, 1 nay.
With 11 yeses and 1 no, the motion carries. Thank you. That brings us now to the last item on our deliberative agenda, item 5.5, authorization to accept a work of public art from the Abenaki Nation of Missisquoi Tribal Council, BCA. Before turning to the council on this item, I do just want to, in my role as chair, offer a bit of explanation. This item was originally warned as an item on our consent agenda. Some further context to that is that, from my perspective, the reason why this item is on our agenda is because under the city's procurement policy, whenever any individual or entity offers a gift to the city over the value of $50, the city, through the mayor's administration, is unable to accept that gift unless authorized by the city council. And so Excuse me, the City Hall will please come to order. This was presented to us by the administration, asking the council to authorize the city to accept a gift, which under our procurement policy is required for items over $50. So I do just want to note that that's the reason why it was placed on the administrative agenda. If any gift was presented to the city and the city was asking for the authority to accept it over $50, a similar question would be brought before us. This is now on our deliberative agenda, however. Councillor Schachter, you had asked that this be taken off the deliberative agenda. Would you like the floor on the item?
Sure. I'm glad to take the floor now, if that makes the
Sure.
most sense. Yes, thank you, President Travers, and thank you to all who spoke this evening. This first came to my attention at the October meeting of the Parks, Arts, and Culture Committee, PAC, and I became aware that there was a lot of complexity and pain behind this conversation of this gift being offered to the city, and I've since dug in, and I just felt like this agenda item deserved some more deliberation, sort of acknowledging that there's a lot behind it. To the representatives of the Abenaki Nation of the Missisquoi, I acknowledge, it's my understanding that having no answer from the city on the acceptance of this gift for, I think, more than a year is very harmful, and I honor and recognize the time and care that's gone into this, and for your partnership for many years. I've also come to realize that there are many concerns being discussed, I think, at the state level around the state recognition process. This was spoken to in the public forum this evening, and I feel that it's important as a body that we just sort of acknowledge and are cognizant of sort of the complexities behind this. And so I would like to open the floor for deliberation, but name that that is what prompted me to pull this off of consent this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schachter. Before asking if there's any motion on the item, I do know that we have representatives from the city administration here. Is there anyone from the administration that wishes to be recognized on this item before I open the floor to other councillors? Okay.
I'm sorry, President Travers, Doreen Craft, our BCA director, is online, and I hope she's online.
Okay. I do see Director Kraft, certainly no obligation to chime in on the item, but if, and I do know Director Kraft had some personal items to attend to as well this evening. But if Director Kraft or anyone else from the administration wanted to chime in on it, certainly wanted to provide that opportunity. Otherwise, if there's any other councilors with comments or questions on the item, would be happy to turn the floor to you. Yes, Councilor Bergman.
Well, this is clearly a very difficult issue with two points of view that I think that we tonight would not do well to be adjudicating. I mean, that's sort of what it is, or at least laying this out. We actually have got a racial equity, inclusion, and belonging committee and in a committee process that would be dedicated to figuring out what we should be doing in this makes some sort of sense. So my inclination is to have it go there. I think that it would be important for our community to have a monument to the indigenous people of the land that we are on. And I think that us, as a non-native nation, or part of a non-native nation, are not really well positioned to be making that decision. And whether a committee hearing it, where they can come to a some sort of idea where a memorial, a recognition, something that is of a public nature be placed in our Battery Park, right, which was, you know, hallowed ground in the formation of this country as part of the encampment to save it from the British invasion of 1812. I don't know if that was actually, I don't know. I'm not going to go down that road because there's nothing good that's going to come out of my mouth. But to my mind, it would be good if there could be a memorial that we would be able to place there, where there was some recognition about that. And I hear there being some significant issues with the nature of the gift. So this is my muddling through at this time. And if people wanted me to make a motion to, I see yesing, so I'm going to move to refer this to the REIB committee so that this can be worked out, and perhaps we can get to a place where the city of Burlington is not in the middle of a fight between folks who clearly there's a nation there, and I have worked with people in Missisquoi since Homer did the hunting and fishing campaign in 1976. So this cuts deep to me. I have strong feelings about the weight of history decision, which I thought was a terrible decision by the Vermont Supreme Court, striking Aboriginal rights, and think it was bad law. And I've written that in a law review article that has been published for like now 25 years. So, all
right.
Blah, blah. Sorry
It's okay.
for going on.
So there's a motion on the floor to refer the matter to the REIB committee. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second by Councillor Schachter. Councillor Bergman, you are over time here. So Councillor Litwin, do you want the floor?
Yeah, just to speak to the motion. So I hear the logic. It makes a lot of sense to have some more process around this. And, but ultimately what I heard is that we have sort of two problems. You know, the accepting of the gift, and then also the policy that the city has needs, I guess, some more deliberative dialogue in the community as well. And I heard that also, I think, from the comments, or reading between the line in the comments, from tonight's public forum. Ultimately, I guess I will join to vote to move this back to the REIB committee, but I just want to say that when I think about the purpose of public art, it's actually to both unify us and bring us together as a community in a prideful way, but also so that in this case, that we are both being honoring and respectful of representation of the people who lived here long before my family immigrated to the United States. So I guess I make a plea to the voters as well that this is why we need an REIB office. It's when these types of issues come before the council, we're out of our depth a little bit, and we need folks like Dr. Perkins and her great team of people there to help us sort of sort through these very difficult conversations in a way that doesn't cause more harm. So I certainly don't want us to accept art that would cause public harm, and I also don't want to harm people through that decision as well, without having some continued communal dialogue, which seems to be a recurring theme lately, that we need a lot of community dialogue at this time. So thank you for the motion. Ultimately, I will support this, but I'm wary of us accepting any gifts that harm any community in the name of art. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Litwin. Councillor Schachter on the motion to refer, and then Councillor Carpenter.
Yes, thank you, President Travers, and thank you, Councillor Bergman. I will be supporting this. I pulled this from consent in part because of fear of harm and wanting to minimize that harm, and feeling like the council had not had the process it needed to really, anyways, to weigh in at this moment. And I want to commend everyone who sort of has been working on this for a long time. The memo that the council received was very well done, and specifically had a few lines that were sitting with me going into tonight. One was that recognizing the impact of the wider conversation regarding cultural representation and recognition, the city team were of the opinion that city council was the most appropriate body to provide a decision on the acceptance of the piece, and that broader policy questions relating to the ongoing public conversation centered on Abenaki recognition and representation were identified as matters appropriately addressed at the city council level. And so acknowledging that there felt like there was a responsibility for us to respond in a thoughtful way, but that process had not yet been built. So I was struggling with where to go from here. So I just want to say I'll be supporting the referral to the REIB committee. I second Councillor Litwin's point that this is why it's very helpful to have this office and this committee to support our city in this way. And so thank you for the motion. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Schachter. Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you. I won't repeat, but I just hope that I think sending it to RAB is the right decision, and that the outcome is that we can figure out a way to honor all of those that were here before us. And so that's a discussion we can get along peacefully, and so we need to figure out a way to do that. The other thing, which is really a sidebar, but I think a conversation should be had with BCA around, how do you deal with controversial art? And we don't have to answer that tonight, but there are other gifts that could come up that would create some problems, so we should be clear on what that process is. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Carpenter. Is there any other councillor that wishes to be recognized on this item? All right, then we'll go to a vote then. The motion is on referral to the REIB committee. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Are any opposed? That is unanimous. So that is the end of our deliberative agenda, which now takes us to item 6, committee reports. Is there any councillor with a committee report? Councillor Bergman.
Yes,
Councillor Bergman.
Thank you. Ordinance Committee is meeting on this Thursday at 4:30 in the Busher Conference Room to discuss the UVM housing habitability issue. And we'll be getting there in talking about their reports. They've just submitted the documentation that we had requested. It was due on the 18th, which was tomorrow, and we got it yesterday and today from Champlain and UVM. So we'll be talking about that, as well as the proposals from the permitting and inspections. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bergman. Is there any other councillor with a committee report? Councillor Grant, and then Barlow.
Thank you. Regarding the REIB committee, the next meeting will be, it'll be a little bit different. There's a decision that's been made, and I think that it's a good one, to move the BIPOC stakeholders quarterly meeting to an REIB committee meeting. So once a quarter, we would be giving up the committee meeting for the stakeholders meeting. And the reason that we would be doing this is because, one, the previous time was difficult for people to attend because it fell during their work day. So having a meeting starting at 5:30 p.m. Should be attractive to people who are interested in coming and discussing issues that affect our BIPOC and New American community. It'll help the city to be more aware of issues that specifically affect that community. And I think it will add to making this a more consistent meeting, which hasn't always happened in the past, but that Director Perkins is committed to making sure occurs regularly going forward. I do want to, again, encourage people to vote to codify this department on town meeting day. It is a ballot item. There continue to be many people talking about this in a very negative fashion. Hopefully, if you did not have a chance to attend your recent NPA meetings, that you watch them online on Town Meeting TV, because there have been presentations from the REIB team describing that the work they do and the importance of that work and what it would mean to codify it in our city's charter. The Public Safety Committee meeting will be meeting next Thursday, and we will have State's Attorney Sarah George as a guest. There is a press conference tomorrow that will be focused on community safety. So I definitely recommend, it occurs during most people's workday, but once again, Town Meeting TV will be going ahead to film those. And finally, I would just say something I previously mentioned, but will mention again, the January Public Safety Committee included a lot of data from our police and fire departments, and as people consider the ballot item to increase the specific tax for those two departments, there is a lot of information that will help your decision, which I hope will be yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Barlow.
Yes, the Transportation, Energy, and Utilities Committee will be meeting this Thursday, February 19th at noon, and we'll be down at 645 Pine. And among other things, we'll be taking up the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission's annual work program for planning activities, otherwise known as the CCRPC UPWP. And there'll be a public hearing on that, and we'll be talking about that. That's it.
Thank you, Councilor Barlow. Is there any other councilor with a committee report? Okay, that takes us then to City Council General City Affairs. Is there any councilor that wishes to be recognized on this item? Yes, Councilor Singh.
I just wanted to, today is actually the Lunar New Year, so it's Chinese New Year, and in honor of my Chinese heritage, I wanted to share with everybody at this table what's called a hung bao. It is a red envelope that is given to people on Chinese New Year to wish them prosperity, luck, and good fortune. And as my coworkers and in honor of that tradition, I'd like to pass each one of you an envelope. It has $1 in it because that's part of the tradition that there should be a crisp money in there. But and they always ask that you don't open the envelope in front of the person that gives it to you. But I wanted to wish everybody and all of my family out there happy Chinese New Year.
Thank you, Councilor Singh. That is below our acceptable gift threshold, so that will be appropriate. And Happy New Year. Is there any other councilor that wishes to be recognized on General City Affairs? Okay. I do not have any council updates on the City Council President updates, so seeing no other business on our agenda, absent objection, I'll go ahead and adjourn our meeting at 8:37 p.m. Thank you.